So this mimer, which starts with the topic or the title, L'Hovin Inyan Simchas Torah, which means to understand the what and about the festival and the festivities of Simchas Torah. It is not a mimer which is about Simchas Torah per se, although it culminates in that discussion. The mimer is about and traces the Jews' service in the entire month of Tishrei, emphasizing the idea of the Jewish unity, emphasizing the idea of unity of all the Jews together, and how that is emphasized and progresses in its revelation and its practice during the first month of the year, the month of Tishrei. And it discusses that there really is an essential bond that unites and connects all Jews alike in relationship to how they share God, and how that it becomes expressed through the festival of the month. The culmination.
Excuse me, Rabbi, can you put the volume up a little bit?
So the mimer will speak and teach us that every single Jew has inside of themselves a portion of God, connection to God, and that portion, that connection allows us to be inspired from the month of Tishrei, and we can bring that potential which is expressed in our souls of our connection to Hashem, and Tishrei allows it to become revealed. The month of Tishrei allows it to become revealed till it culminates in the strongest level of joy and revelation of connection at the festival of Simchas Torah. And at that point, it moves from a state of potential to a more revealed state in our hearts, mind, and action. The action of the dancing with the Torah on Simchas Torah. And then the mimer wants to emphasize to us that we need to harness, we need to continually take that energy and that utilize that energy which has come from a potential to a revealed state in this period of time, in the period of the last days of the month of Tishrei, culminating in Simchas Torah, and then utilize that and to give us energy for the rest of the year. Okay, so let's begin. L'Hovin Inyan Simchas Torah, to comprehend, to understand the whole theme and idea of what Simchas Torah is. So the Rebbe starts, B'yadua hadiyuk b'zeh. It's well known and discussed, the idea that exists in Simchas Torah, and the question that arises by our activity of Simchas Torah. And what is that? Ma ha'epan hasimcha. In what way do we express the rejoicing of Simchas Torah? For who, and it is about who shalikuchim Sefer Torah, that we take a Sefer Torah, k'fi shehu krucha and mechusa b'mapa. We take a Sefer Torah, the way it is covered, and the way it is concealed in its mantle, in its own personal covering. And at that point, while it's covered, you can't learn the Torah. And what we do is umaraktim imay, we dance with it. So this initiates a question. This is the this initiates and motivates a question that we dance with the Torah, but we're not learning with the Torah. And that seems to be not what the emphasis of Torah is about. Let's continue. The im hiyesh shabatorah ksiv, that even though the Torah is described within the verse that it is hi chochmasa u binaschem, that it is your wisdom and your understanding, and that is it allows and it develops our intellectual appreciation and connection to Hashem, but it is our wisdom. The expression, the verses say, it is our wisdom. It represents our wisdom and our understanding. And how does one understand? One understands by learning. And he continues in the text, Makol Mokam, Ha'efen HaSimcha. So the way that we express our joy on Simchas Torah, Huloi al Yedei Limud, it's not through learning the iyun or depth of analysis of learning Torah, but how do we express our activity with the Torah? Kim al Yedei Rikud Dafna, we deliberately, and it is all about dancing with the Torah. And through this dancing, Shalochein HaSimcha, the Simchas Torah, and the Simcha that's expressed on Simchas Torah, that's something that's experienced who Eitzel Kol Yisrael, that's experienced by every single Jew. But Gam Eitzel Pshutim B'Yeser, and even the ones of the Jews who are more simply of folk, that don't necessarily appreciate the content of it, she'ein shaichem lahasogo v'habonam, even to the point of there are some people that don't even understand or don't even connect to the wisdom and the depth that's in the Torah. And as well, we express that this is a connection that every single person has got with the Torah. Simchas Torah is a time of joy for all the Jews, even the ones who who comprehend more, the ones that comprehend a little. Everybody expresses their joy by dancing the Torah. And further, v'yaseru mizu, and more, sheba'ez simcha rekudim dahakofas, and at that time of rejoicing and dancing, of the dancing of the hakofas, of the dancing with the Torah, at that time, nimshachim, at that time of the dancing, we find that there is, and the Rebbe says, Veren Zuge kumen, and also we find that people are attracted, and zugezeugen, they are attracted, they join. Gam ke'elu, even those people, shekasher Yemei Hoshona ein nikah hakesher b'yisachtos, even those people who don't normally find, or we don't normally see them connecting to the Torah during the rest of the year, they seem to come and they seem to also get drawn in. They also seem to come and connect to the Torah. And not only that, and we see that in the synagogue at the festival time, that all sorts of people turn up at the Simchas Torah festivities. So we reiterate our question: why are we expressing our connection to something which is called our chachmosa v'binoscha, which is called our wisdom and our understanding? We express it in that, in not the learning, but in the joy of it. And Inyan Simchas Torah, hu b'chol echer miYisrael. And this idea that this expression of simcha is with all the Jews, and in particular, mizbata gam b'zeh shemrakidim ima sefer Torah. It's expressed by dancing with the Torah scroll, not with another book of the Torah, but the Torah scroll itself. That is Torah Shebeksav Dafka, the written Torah. We don't find that people dance with a book of the Torah. We find that they dance with the written laws, particularly. And she'afilu zeh shelo yeda ma ka'ama, and even a person who doesn't comprehend what's in it, nevertheless, he makes ka'ama, he mavarach birkas HaTorah, he makes a blessing on the Torah, when they read from the Torah Kesav. So therefore we see that in fact every single person has a connection to the written Torah on a conscious level, and on a revealed level. The oral law, the teachings of the Torah, all the books of the Torah, one studies that. But the written law, the oral Torah, everybody seems to have its connection to it, and that therefore they dance with it. And that connection that they seem to have with the Sefer Torah doesn't seem to be that same connection that they have with the book of the law, with another book of teaching from it. And interestingly, we can say that everybody is equally required, whether it be the higher understanding, learned person, or even the most simplest person. They make the same blessing on the Torah. So therefore, it appears that there is some sort of deeper connection, a deep connection that goes beyond understanding, that connects every single Jew. And it is not dependent upon the level of understanding, but it is an essential connection that a person has, in particular with the written law, with the Torah scroll. And Mekivon Shezeh Ma'ashem Avorach Brichas HaTorah Hu Al Pi Tziva HaTorah Ve'emes. And in particular, there's the requirement that the people who are called to the Torah have to recite a blessing over the Torah. And in general, when a person has to require to make a blessing of the Torah, that's mandated by the Torah, and the Torah is a Torah of truth, then a person is required to make a blessing when he learns Torah. So Hari Poshut Shekain Hu B'Metzias. And since the Torah demands that a person say the blessing, and that's what we do in our morning blessings, we make a blessing on the Torah. It goes without saying that this reflects a true reality that every single person has a connection with the Torah. Even a person who doesn't know what's in the Torah, he's mamshech, he draws down the greatness, the God's infinite light, even ba'ad atzmas mohus, even the most essence and the highest level of godliness. And by making his blessing, he draws that highest level, no matter what level of his understanding, he draws that down by Torah Sha'alemet, in the Torah that he studies. And this idea of reading the Torah and making the blessing of the Torah is like for someone who reads the Torah. Literally, we say Kera b'Torah. You read the Torah. The expression is Kera b'Torah, but that word in Hebrew can also mean, Korah means to call, and by virtue, or also by reading the Torah, you can also translate that word Keresh B'Torah to also mean you call Torah. That means you call Hashem's revelation. You call them forth. You bring Hashem into the Torah at the time when you learn Torah. So therefore, we see that there's an essential connection between the written law and the blessings of the Keresh B'Torah and the Torah that he studies. That connects a person to the Torah. So we return to our question and we repeat our question. What is that significance in that we express our joy of dancing with the Torah with dancing with the Torah while it's covered? A second point, a second question. The Rebbe wants to address a second question, right? But Gam Yadu Hadiyok, also there's a second aspect that we need to inquire about and to express. Loma Eisin Simchat Torah B'Shmini Atzeres. Why do we explicitly make Simchas Torah at the end of the Succos festival at the time of Shmini Atzeres? And b'chutz la'aretz beyond Sheni Shmini Atzeres, and outside of Israel, it would be on the second day of the Yontiv of Shmini Atzeres. L'cheira, at first glance, wouldn't have been the most appropriate to establish the time of the joyousness of the festival of dancing with the Torah. It should have been at the time of the giving of the Torah, at the festival of Shavuos. That should be the time when we should establish and make the Yontiv at Zman Matan Teresenu, at the time of giving of the Torah, which we commonly call the festival of Shavuos. That should be the time, since that is the time of giving the Torah. That is the time when we should celebrate the aspects of Torah. Okay, so Mavua Habio Bazeh, an answer is given to this. So in the new section in base, Mavua Habio Bazeh, the Rebbe starts to say an explanation, and al pi ma shedi'isa b'medrash, according to what's explained in Medrash, and we're going to now quote a number of lines from a Medrash, and then we will use this Medrash to explain why we have it at this point rather than at that point. Okay, so now basically we're going to address question number 2. So the Medrash says, Roya Heisa Atzeres Shel Chag Shetia Recheka Chamisha Yom Keneged Atzeres Shel Pesach. It would have been appropriate, the Medrash tells us, it would have been a good idea, it would have been appropriate. Roya Heisa Atzeres Shel Chag. It would have been appropriate that the concluding festival of the holiday of Sukkot Shetei Recheka, that it should be Chamisha Yom, it should be 50 days post Sukkot, because Keneged Atzeres Shel Pesach, because that's what happens in relationship to the festival of Pesach. The festival of Pesach, the first is on the 15th of Nisan. 50 days later, after counting 49 days plus 1, on the 50th day we have the festival of Shavuos. So Ella Atzeres Shel Chag Al Yedei Shehen Yetzim Min HaKayetz L'Cherev. However, the difference between the two festivals, so even though it would have been appropriate to have the festival of Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah 50 days after the conclusion of, or the 50 days after Sukkot, just like Shavuos just like Pesach has a festival 50 days afterwards. But the difference between the two is Ela Atzeres Shel Chag. However, the Shmini Atzeres of the Sukkot festival, Al Yedei Yetzim Min HaKayetz L'Cherev, because This is at the time of the conclusion of the summertime, and it is the entrance to l'cheref, to the wintertime. Les biyome the yazlin v'yasin. They do not have a sufficient number of days to go and then return, because why wouldn't they have enough days? Surely it's the same 50 days between Pesach to Shavuos as it is to the same 50 days between Succos and the proposed 50 days afterwards. And so it would be the same amount of days. It's not really because there isn't enough time, but because the rainy season starts in Israel post Succos time, and then there are the early rains, the middle rains, and the late rains which come, and then a person needs to prepare the grounds and their fields for sowing and sufficient, and it's very difficult to traverse the roads. Therefore, it's more convenient that the festival should happen immediately afterwards. And then to emphasize that point, the Medrash continues, to illustrate with analogy, there was, for instance, a time. There was a melech, there was a king. He had a number of daughters. And some of those daughters were married to people who are further away. Some people who were closer. Yom echad ba'u kulam, and on one day they all arrived. Lishol sholem hamelech avichem, to visit, inquire about their welfare, to visit and see and to visit their father, the king. And ba'omar hamelech, and the king said, Elu shenisres b'mokom korov, the ones who live closer by, they have ample opportunity to go and to return. But the ones who live further away, it's not so easy for them. They don't have opportunities to go and return soon. Therefore, ad di'inon kulam etzli, while they are all with me, hachi nabit kulam, I'm going to make for them chad yontov, one day, benechdei imam, and we can rejoice together. The Medrash continues, also with regard to the festivals following Pesach, when the Jews are making the nofkin machoref lakayef, when they're making that transition from the lead up to Pesach time to the summertime, that is, the Omar Kodesh Baruch says, they have sufficient opportunity to go and return, meaning that it's pleasant days, it's easy days. It's a warm and sunny days, and it's easy to traverse the period. But with regard to a festival which follows Al Yedei Shehen Yetzim Makayetz L'Chorov, because you would be leaving, you would be transitioning from the summer period to the winter period, and that's much more difficult. Omer HaKodesh Baruch Hu, Hashem said, "Les b'yema l'misel l'meiseh." So these days are not sufficient days to be able to go and return. They're not as convenient. Therefore, he made the festival, the Shmini Atzeres and Simcha, which includes Simchas Torah, Ela ad inon hachad da'avit kulam, while everybody was here for the Sukkos period. Chad Yom Tov, we make one special Yom Tov. We call that Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah B'nechti, and we can rejoice together. That's the end of the Medrash. So therefore, we conclude with Zehomasha Eis and Simchas Torah B'Shmini Atzeres, and that's why we make Simchas Torah and Shmini Atzeres, explaining Ki Hayom Echad Shabo Boim Al Bonos, because when we're talking about that one day when all the daughters come, and why are they called daughters? Because we have the expression B'nai Zion v'Yerushalayim, the daughters of Zion, Jerusalem. And who does that refer to? That refers to Hainu Neshamas Yisrael. That refers to all the Jewish nation, the Jewish people. And they come, Lishel Sholem HaMelech, they come to inquire about the welfare of the king, Kei al Yom Kippur, and that refers to the day of Yom Kippur. Ula Achazer, and after that, Nema, the king says, now bet kulam Yom Tov, let us make a Yom Tov and we'll stay for the Succos period, and we'll join together. But who is Simchas Torah? And this is the refers to Simchas Torah, Shenikvo b'Shmini Atzeres, which has been set by our sages to be celebrated on Shmini Atzeres. Shehui Echad Yom Tov, which this is the day, the one day, but Dugmas Hayom Echad Yom Kippur, because this is one day similar to the festival of the Yom Echad of Yom Kippur. So therefore, we have explained that there is a connecting point between the one day and the one festival. There is a connecting point, and once the Jews are already there because they came for Yom Kippur, there and they continue to stay, and Hashem makes the festive day that while everybody is there to rejoice together. Now let's continue and understand what we mean by why specifically we call Yom Kippur the one day, and why we call all the daughters the Jewish souls, and the idea of Simchas Torah, and we establish that together. Okay, so section 3 of the Maimah then starts in section Gimel, L'Hovin Inyan Simchas, utilizing an idea that was explained at a previous time, in particular the Maimah at the beginning of Succos, which was said in that year. Shekol Hama'adim the Chodesh Tishrei, and it was explained in that Maimah that all the festivals of Chodesh Tishrei Heim Bechina Shel Achas have a commonality, have a common expression in that they express the idea of a unity of Hashem, and that's where we're going to be discussing, and we're going to spend our time in the next section of the Maimah, explaining the unity, the level of Achdus, the level of unity of Achas, of one, that's expressed in the month of Tishrei. Okay. Further, we will continue and understand that there is an idea of Chodesh Tishrei expresses a specific aspect of the idea of oneness. Now we've learned previously that Achas or Echad refers to how God is beyond any connecting point to the world. However, that he is, and the whole world is dependent on Hashem. He is the one and only God, and then there's nothing else but God. And in that he is unique and different to all other existence, because all other existence is dependent upon him. This level of oneness, uniqueness, is also shared by the neshamas of Yisrael, and that is the connective point that we're going to express and develop as we go further. Dehine al Rosh Hashona, concerning Rosh Hashona, Omar Rabbeinu Zal, our sages teach that mitzvahs hayem b'shefer, that the specific mitzvah of the day of Rosh Hashona is the mitzvah of shefer. Hainu dezeh masha hayem de Rosh Hashona hu chelik mashah hamaderes hu b'mitzvah achas. That is to say that there is a differing idea in the mitzvah of this, the single mitzvah that exists in Rosh Hashona, in that it is a single mitzvah. And there is only one mitzvah on that day. That is the mitzvah of blowing the shofar, mitzvah shofar, as he says. Uba mitzvah zu, and in this particular mitzvah, Gufa Kosev, the Rambam writes, Shehu Gezeres HaKosev, that this is a mitzvah which is a decree, a scriptural decree. L'mayla matam, a mitzvah which has no reason that the intellect can fully grasp. It's a divine command that transcends reason and intellect and reflects an aspect of the essential core of the soul, of the godly core of the soul, which we will discuss. The Hagam Shah Mitzvah the Shefer Gam Merames Al Inyonim. So even though in the literature we have a discussion about the Shefer, even though we have in the literature a discussion of the Shefer, that there are a number of reasons why we blow the Shefer on Rosh Hashona, and they lend itself to an understanding, but that's not necessarily the essential aspect of the mitzvah, as the Rambam quite clearly says, that it is a gezerah. It is gezeres hakosov. It is a scriptural decree. So that the Rambam says that shah mitzvah the shefer gam merames al inyonim hochi nailim, that they refer to loftier rungs of the service of the inyan of tshuva, and they reflect the eye of tshuva, and therefore this is potentially a reason. Rambam the Remesh yesh bedova, that the Rambam says that there is mitzvahs there. The Hagam Shah mitzvah the shefer gam merumas al inyonim hochi nailim b'inyan of tshuva. So even though the Rambam says that the idea of the shefer is implied and implies higher levels of the service of tshuva, as the Rambam continues and says, it is an illusion that there is an aspect which a person could understand. But its ultimate primary aspect is that the gezeres hakosov l'mayla matam, that it's something which is beyond understanding. But al derech zeh, so in a similar sense, with Yom Kippur, with Yom Kippur as well, there is an aspect which is beyond understanding. V'siyum aseres yomim, and also the completion of the 10 days, shebein Rosh Hashona the Yom Kippur, which is the conclusion of the 10 days of tshuva between Rosh Hashona and Yom Kippur. They both share, and it's one spectrum, it's one continuum that continues the idea shehi b'chinas achas, that they both contain the idea that there is an aspect of oneness about it. And in that oneness, it's expressed b'chol hagimel b'chinas, in the three frameworks, in the three dimensions that we can understand spirituality in the idea of Elam, Shona, Nefesh. Now, we have spoken out in previous time, derived from Sefer Yetzirah, that all of existence can be understood by in a three coordinate geometry of Elam, Shona, Nefesh, meaning Elam a space, Shona a time, and Nefesh and a spiritual aspect to it. And Yom Kippur is the ultimate expression of that. Why is that? He continues, because the ultimate, the most unique aspect, the most highest peak of the service of Yom Kippur, was in the Holy of Holies. And in the Holy of Holies, it is a one place, it is a physical area, one place, that one place has an expression which goes beyond place. That is to say, as is well known, that the Oren, the place of the Kodesh Kedoshim, where the Holy Ark was a place which did not take up physical place. Right? So even though there were dimensions, physical dimensions of the Holy of Holies. Nevertheless, the Ark, when you measured the entire Ark from it itself did not take up any space. The entire width of the chamber was only 20 cubits. But when you measured once the space from one wall to the Ark, it was 10 cubits. And when you measured from the other corner, from the other wall to the Ark, to the other side of the Ark, that was 10 cubits. and the ark itself seemed to not take up any place. There's an aspect, a dimension of infinity within the finite dimensions of the world there. To Yom Kippur, shenikra b'shem achas b'shona, and Yom Kippur is also called the one time of the year, the once in the year time of the special point of Yom Kippur. Therefore, b'chinas achas b'shona. So therefore, in place, there's an aspect of uniqueness, of oneness in space. There's in time, there's a oneness in time, and as explained, that there's an aspect of this oneness in time because it's a unique day in that this is the day of Yom Kippur, the day of Yom Kippur, a day when the Satan, when the prosecutor against the Jews doesn't have a say on that day, as it says that the gematria, the numerical value of the word Hasatan is 364. That is to say that there are 365 days in a year, but there is 364 days which he rules, which are ordinate, which are days which have an aspect which the world and physicality involves itself. But on the day of Yom Kippur, which is a totally spiritual world, when we separate from food and we are like spiritual beings that don't have any food, right? This is a day that the Satan doesn't have a rulership on it. So therefore, this is a day of a uniqueness in time. But says Al Yadei Kohen Gadol, and the service, all the services in the temple on that day was done by the Kohen Gadol. That is the one unique individual, the high priest. It's true that the Kohen Gadol did it on behalf, as a proxy, as an agent for all the Jews. Nevertheless, it was only he himself that could do it. And as the verse says, "V'yavdel Aaron lakadshe kedesh kadoshim," that Aaron has been separated out. He's been made unique in that he has to sanctify himself as the most holy. And so therefore he is bechinas achas nefesh. So therefore in spirituality, he is the Kohen Gadol. He is the Kohen Gadol. He is he is not just a different category, he's a unique category amongst the Jewish people. Therefore, on this day of Yom Kippur, sharing the aspect to Rosh Hashona, that it is a achas, it is a unique day. It shares it in the continuum to the Yom Kippur day, where it is the ultimate idea of the achas that's expressed in time, space, and in time, space, and nefesh, and soul, and spirituality. It is an achas. And in a similar sense, we also have the next festival of Tishrei. The Succos festival exhibits the idea of achas, of the specialness and oneness. And that is the common line, the commonality that runs through the Tishrei. He continues, Al derech zeh hu gam b'negei Succos. It also refers to Succos. L'Hovin Inyan Simchas Torah, yeshiva b'sukkah. Because when we talk about the sukkah, the mitzvah of the sukkah is to dwell in the sukkah, to live in the sukkah. And the sukkah is hu behemshach kol shivas yemei sukkahs. And that's a mitzvah that's fulfilled through the 7 days of sukkah. Merega rishon shabbat chalosim, from the beginning of when the festival starts, meaning that it takes up all the days of sukkahs. Mudgesh inyan ha'achdus, it emphasizes that it's a one idea, because the sukkah takes up the entire mitzvah of all the mitzvahs of sukkah from the beginning to its end, as well as there's a special emphasis on unity. The expression is, as I just say, Kol Yisrael leisha b'sukkah achas, that all the Jewish people are worthy and they could, because of their unity, could all be joined together and live in one sukkah. And that is because the the sukkah encompasses and transcends all the differences between all the Jews and accompanies and engulfs all the Jews as one. So therefore it's capable of uniting the entire Jewish people, even though they might be disparate types of people, and there might be different classes of people. Nevertheless, the sukkah gathers them all together, and everybody is allowed to sit in that one sukkah. But Kamei Kain, and similarly, that idea of oneness is also applies to the mitzvah of taking the 4 species of Natilis the Daled Milim, of taking the 4 species, because we know that the 4 species, that the four aspects which compromise the mitzvah of the lulav and esrog, all the 4 items in that, all the 4 species, all the 4 items in that in those 4 things express an aspect of unity, and that's their theme. They draw down from the unity that is expressed in the sukkah, the makifim of the sukkah. They draw down the makif, the encompassing light of the one sukkah, and they draw it down, b'pnimius, down into in an internalized fashion. And that is the reason why, according to Kabbalah, the mitzvah of taking the 4 species should be performed in a sukkah, because we want to call echad medaled minim, because we want all of these four species that they express a level of mudgish gam inyan akras. They express a level of idea of unity, and they should be done in a place which expresses unity. Now, in particular, each of the 4 mitzvahs, each of the 4 species, express and articulate their own version of the idea of actus of unity. In particular, each one of the four, as the lulav itself can only be used if its leaves are joined together. The leaves of the lulav have to be joined together as one, like as one unit, and the hadassim have to have three little leaves together in one little circle, and they're always joined together like units, the units of 3, and not one leaf should be higher than the other, also the arobas, the willows, also expresses the concept of unity, since it grows in groups together. But this is more seen in more particularized bafrat esrog, in the esrog, because the esrog, it shows an aspect of unity, kamesha mudgesh, as the Talmud teaches us, that this expresses an idea of unity and achdus oid even more. Why? Because it lives and it exists through all different seasons, as we will discuss. Shalochin b'seder hadalet minim shebeksav, and it is the most primary object, because in the verse which describes the 4 species, it expresses the esrig first, because it calls it the pre-eitz hodor. It is the first in the verse which describes the mitzvah of the lulav and esrig. The first one mentioned is the esrig. Therefore it's considered in some respects a primary. We continue shalochin b'seder hadalet minim shebeksav, because the order in the verse shagam seder b'teruhu teru, because and we can say that the order that's written in the verse is very particular. Has got an emphasis and is correct, and therefore that shows on its priority. Hascholas hu me'esrig. It starts with the idea of the esrig, called the pre-eitz hodor. Now, the zeh masha esrig nikra kosa b'shem pre-eitz hodor, and that it's called. It's not called explicitly a beautiful fruit, but it's called a hodor fruit. Now, the hodor, the word hodor, which means a nice or beautiful, something beautiful. There is a teaching that's learnt out from the Talmud about that it says Shehud lefi shahader. If you look at that word and you see the root of the word, but if you look at the word a little bit different, right, as if it doesn't have the hay, you can read it shahader, shader, that it lives, that it exists. Be'ilana, on a tree, mashon lashona. It goes and it lives on the tree from one year to the next. That is, it goes through all 4 seasons. It goes through the 4 seasons of a year. And because it goes through the 4 seasons of the year, and it's not harmed by this of the climatic change in the 4 seasons of the year, it shows that it has something of essence and oneness which connects over the entire year. Not only does it tolerate the changes in the year and the season, but it extracts nourishment from them and it grows because of them. So therefore, this shows that there will a specific characteristic that it can grow from all the 4 seasons, and it can be nurtured from it. And this shows that it has a oneness with the whole year, and therefore it unites all the 4 seasons together, and it has this uniting capability that's being able to unite with the other three components of the L'Hovin Esrog set. And therefore the beauty of the Esrog is that its oneness is reflected and joins together the other parts of the Daled Minim. And therefore Shalochein ha'inyan dehada shebadaled minim limdim esrog. So therefore the beautifulness or the beautiness of the esrog, right, then gets infused and embedded into the other 3 points, into the other 3 parts of the L'Hovin Esrog, and that we say that, and therefore this is a teaching that the other components should be as beautiful as well, that they should also be hoder, beautiful, in that they should be beautiful in appearance. But neisif lezeh, and in addition to that, should call echad mahadalet milim meira al inyan achdos. And therefore, in addition to the idea that each of the 4 parts of the Dalet, of the 4 components of the 4 parts of the L'Hovin Esrog combination, each one individually reflects an idea of unity. It draws out, and as joined together, they become one entire concept of unity. This joins together with the festival within Tishrei, and it joins together with what we've said before, the idea of the oneness, which is in Rosh Hashona, the oneness, which is in Yom Kippur, and that's reflected in the oneness of the festival of Succos. And inyan mitzvah nitna until is daled minim. So therefore, the mitzvah of taking the four kinds together, the 4 species, who la'achad is to which we want to unite and bring together, called daled milim, all the 4 types, as the Medrash says, shemerim, and this teaches on the unity of all the 4 different classes and the different types of Jews, as expressed by the Medrash. And we bring them into the sukkah, which is something which unites everybody together. That is to say, that the Medrash talks about the 4 types of Jews as reflected in their participation in Torah and mitzvahs. That some both have Torah, that the Esrog represents a person who has Torah and mitzvahs, and the Lulav represents the one who excels in Torah, but not necessarily in the fulfillment of every mitzvah, while the Hadas distinguishes a person to mitzvahs, but not necessarily Torah study, and the Arava is a person who doesn't excel in either of the 2. But nevertheless, the mitzvah of the Daled minim of the four kinds, the four kinds, and the L'Hovin Esrog unites all the Jews together, expressed in their Jewishness, and they're brought together in the sukkah. So therefore, we see shehoye ve'asa kulam aguda achas. They become, as the verse says, in the liturgy of the festival. We say that we all bond together, we all join together. V'yasa kulam aguda achas. We become one unit together, one joining together. Lasas retzeincha, to do Hashem's will. B'leiv sholem, with a perfect heart. So therefore, we see that there is an inherent oneness, unity, that's expressed in the month of Tishrei, and we're going to we go to see that this expression finds its fulfillment in the last days of Tishrei. As we started up our learnings today, we started learnings about the question of Simchas Torah and dancing with the Sefer Torah. We'll see that joins together with the learnings with the idea of dancing and celebrating with the Torah. So at this point, we'll finish today's lesson, and we'll continue with the next part of the Maimer at our next opportunity.